Three Gold and Black Live. Mike Berghoff joins us with Brian Neubert. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, a place that Mike, I think, has been to in his life, I'm going to guess. State Farm agent Trent Johnson, Hilton Garden Inn. We appreciate them. And Mike, in your role, you do have a day job, a big day job, but your other job is the chair of the Board of Trustees, and that role has been, I'll use the term, maybe it's the correct term, interesting since the 13th of March. But tell us a little bit about how you're hanging in there with all this, and from a management perspective, how do you manage in difficulty?
Well, first of all, we couldn't be prouder of our faculty and staff and the administrative team that have put together Protect Purdue, because it is, first of all, it's not something we planned for, right? But that's no different than a lot of businesses in the community and the restaurants who didn't plan for it and they're suffering. But it is a comprehensive challenge for all levels of the university. And we can't forget our students as part of that. You know, it's totally changed their life, their student life, and it's a really big deal. But the team that we have working with it has just been incredible. And I think, you know, it's reflected in our numbers, our metrics compared to maybe some of the other Big Ten campuses.
Yeah, the students have absolutely been in a position to, they're wearing masks, they're doing what they have to do. And there have been a lot of people that said this couldn't be done. So, and yet you don't take it for granted that it's going to be able to continue. It's a day-to-day proposition.
Right. It could change. It could change in 3 days. But, you know, most of the Purdue family acknowledges that we were very early, if not the first, you know, around or about the first week in April, to make it very clear that our intention was to be open in the fall. Yeah. And there was a fair amount of criticism leveled at us for doing that. And as you mentioned, Alan, it could change at any minute. But right now, our statistics are better than the counties and most parts of the state. So in some other Big Ten communities, it's just the opposite. The communities are beating up the universities because they're negatively impacting the environment up there. So far, so good. Thanksgiving's in reach.
Yeah.
You know, we're spending a ton of money. I will say that we're spending a ton of money to keep everybody as safe as possible. And, but it's been an experiment, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense for what Purdue's done right that other people, you know, perhaps haven't, that Purdue's been so successful with this?
Well, I think you have to look at the entire program, and when you put all of the pieces together, each one has made some significant contribution or some level of contribution to the outcome. Fortunately, this 150-year-old university has been well managed that we could afford to take some of the steps that maybe other universities were not able to afford. And a lot of that includes testing and tracing and tracking. You know, not only did we test everybody before they showed up on campus, we've conducted 50,000 tests on campus since school started. Last week, we tested 6,000. And that's not cheap, you know, and plus, when you combine all of the talent we have on campus that can contribute, who are experts in some of this stuff, like the tracing piece of it, you know, researchers who've been working on technologies that we've then applied for an application we weren't thinking about, like tracing. I think that has a lot to do with it, because once you identify a case, if you can properly figure out who's effective and isolate it, it's a little bit like controlling a brush fire before it becomes a wildfire. If you can't do that, think of the handicap. You know, now all of a sudden it just spreads and you've lost control. So if you made me point to one thing, it's the tracking and tracing, but the testing has a lot to do with that as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's been an ongoing, and again, a daily process and a daily thing. How, you know, and you've obviously run a company, but also been involved with the board for a long time. just from a psychological, keeping people leading by example, but also keeping people in the right frame of mind, keeping people positive when they're tired and when they're worn out during this type of situation. What have you been able to draw on to be able to do that and keep that train moving forward, even in the most difficult of times?
Well, at least on the campus side, it's all about the main objective is to complete the semester with our students on campus. So they have an opportunity to at least enjoy some portion of a student life experience. But oh, by the way, if they're on campus, all of the people who keep the place clean and up and running, they stay fully employed. All the additional staff stays fully employed. The faculty have something to do. And constantly reminding everyone of that outcome has just, I think it's helped people just to pitch in and comply. It's not ideal. You've probably noticed the campus is more quiet than it normally is. It doesn't quite have the buzz. But the numbers are here. We got everybody here and they're making the most of it.
Yeah. Obviously, the most important part of the university is the operation of the university, and all that goes into it. But when all these plans were being laid, where on the scale of priority was athletics in terms of trying to get athletics to have something normal? You know what I mean?
Well, we went into it knowing it was at risk.
Yeah.
We were disappointed and surprised when the Big Ten really was the first of the Power Five, or almost the first of the Power Five, to step out. Mm-hmm. Because you might position that it was earlier than needed to be, and maybe the sequence wasn't the way we wanted it to be, where we were out there all by ourselves pretty much. Especially when you figure in we're doing a lot to try and keep this campus safe for 45,000 people on campus.
Right.
We thought would lend itself to allowing us to keep the stadium safe. So we concentrated on the campus first, the academic side of the campus, knowing it could benefit athletics. And so we were ready. We thought we were ready, or close to ready, when the pause button was hit.
Yeah. And you look at that now, and then obviously there's financial hardship on athletics. There's when you have that type of situation, there's talk. Mike Bobinski talked in the last segment about the athletic department's goal to raise $18 million and try to bridge itself. Try to keep this as a one-year problem, all these kind of things that we don't know for sure if that's going to be the case, but you certainly hope that. But from a board perspective, in terms of keeping athletics at the level that it needs to be at to be competitive and to have the experience not only for the student athletes, but also for the campus, what challenges, the specific ones, at least at this point in time, from a financial standpoint, and maybe also from an emotional standpoint, that you can make this work?
I think the first thing is to establish the proper mindset with the department. And Mitch and I and the rest of the board choose to look at it this way, that let's position whatever actions we take, let's keep in mind that we want to be positioned for the long term. Yeah. And to be competitive for the long term, and not make short-term decisions that cripple us in the near term, medium term, and long term. And probably the most obvious, one of the most obvious things that means you try and avoid is cutting sports. And so, with that, we just said, let's do as much as we can to solve the short-term problem, but no more than necessary to preserve our long-term position as a high-performing, high-quality athletic department with great people, talented people who will be with us when we surface on the other end of this thing. And that's kind of what guided us, Alan. And I think our department and the staff have done a hell of a job managing through this in a pretty difficult time.
Yeah.
What do you think changes from all this in terms of the operation of a university, but also how athletics kind of fits into it? Do you have any thoughts on how things are different when you do come out the other side of this?
I'm sure we'll modify a behavioral the behavioral aspects of going to a game, but I hope not. I hope not so much that it takes away from the experience. I mean, we know there'll be some changes, but we're not going to go overboard. We're going to, we'll monitor the situation and make sure that we're not doing more than necessary, and to the point where it damages the overall experience of our student athletes, the coaches and staff, and most importantly, our students, fans, and faculty. We're still kind of in the experiment stage. Mitch and the board are eager to get some fans yet in this season, but it's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. We have some campuses who are in worse shape than us with infections, and it's a bigger challenge for them. And so that complicates our ability to put fans in the stadium, but we've not given up. We're going to continue to promote that and use that as a way to see what's possible. Can we continue to test what's possible, and what can we do successfully to preserve the experience that we all enjoy.
Yeah, you talked to, you and I offline back early in this process that was the goal, is to have fans in Ross-Ade Stadium. You're also fans in Mackey Arena. Again, the virus has something to say about that as well. But is that that's a mindset thing in terms of also saying, we got to think about what's possible as opposed to what's not.
Yeah, clearly. And it means that you put the folks in gear to figure out ways to make that possible. I mean, I thought that was one of the greatest outcomes of the statement in April, when we said, hey, it's our intention to be open, to have students on campus in the fall. Well, guess what happened? Record number of applications, over a record year from last year. Our undergraduate enrollment is at an all-time high, university history. And part of the reason for that is because early on, when students are making decisions about where to send their applications and where they might go to school, we made it clear that we want to be open this fall. And I think we are applying that same kind of logic to athletics. Let's get geared up to make it happen. And if something out of our control happens, so be it.
Yeah. Time for one more, Brian, but fire away.
Sure. Can you just kind of take us back to those first couple months where, obviously you had to start planning for things to open the university and all that goes into it. But at the time, the knowledge was so fluid and probably still kind of remains. So how did you get through those first couple months where you had to plan for things you didn't necessarily have, all of the information on, because the information hadn't been discovered yet?
Yeah, so it started with when Mitch formed the Safe Campus Committee. Mm-hmm. And that was all about, hey, let's review every policy or procedure that we have in place to better prepare us for another inevitable risk. And then shortly thereafter, we took parts of that same group and said, let's develop a Protect Purdue plan. And Mitch assembled an unbelievable staff. They are incredible. David Broker, Eric Barker, our dean of the pharmacy school, Dr. Ramirez, Jay. They meet every Monday, and it was every day for a while, and just started divvying up everybody's assignment. Think of the physical facilities challenge that had to occur. Mm-hmm. We basically went into every classroom, remodified it, every dorm, remodified it. And that team had housing and food services with Beth McCuskey. Enormous tasks, but they're highly qualified, highly competent, and they just took it on one by one. And Mitch brought it up with me today. He just cannot find the words to describe appropriately at a level that captures exactly what these folks are doing. It's really incredible. It's just been a huge advantage to us to have a bench with these kind of folks who could pivot from their day job and had skills that were helpful to us in battling COVID.
All right, Mike, and you are going to be in West Lafayette, not in the stadium, but up at the Purdue renovated Purdue Union Club for tomorrow to watch the game. Tell me about that as we close it out.
Yeah, just looking forward to getting on campus and trying to absorb some portion of a game day experience. But Mitch and I and the board decided it's just not appropriate for us to be there if our students can't be inside the stadium for sure, and if our other fans can't be there, there's no business us being there. But want everybody to know we want to be there, and maybe the thing to do is we just continue to push to find a way to get fans in. But I'll be there for the day of or the watch party, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, it's college football returning to the Big Ten in West Lafayette. That is a good thing and a step in the right direction. So, Mike, thanks so much for your time. We always appreciate you're always so gracious to spend time with us and always bring us some insight. We'll talk in the spring when we hopefully have something else to talk about as well. But safe and health to your family and all that are in your sphere. And again, thanks so much for taking the time. Want to thank our sponsors to XXX, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. Want to thank Scott and Gordon at WLFI for making this happen. Gordon Jackson's done a great job making this changing on the fly. Some great weather in West Lafayette this afternoon, so we may have some thunderstorms here this afternoon, but we're dealing with that as well. Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart as well, thanks so much. Have a great weekend. We'll see how things go tomorrow, and hopefully it will go well for everybody involved, and we'll look forward to next week on Gold and Black Live. Have a good weekend, all, and thanks again.
All right. Iowa.